She was this gun-toting, whiskey-drinking broad.
The super epic fucking broad.
She was a pioneer in the industry.
She's also so famous and so controversial.
So controversial.
So she's kind of a big fucking deal.
Her story is so incredible. She belongs on this podcast because she's a broad you should know. Hello and welcome to Broads You Should Know, the podcast about amazing and noteworthy women from history. I am your host, Sara Gorski, and I am here today for the last episode, listeners, of 2024. We have made it through the entire year. It's been so long. It's now the 52nd week and a few days left in it, and the day after Christmas when this airs. So I hope everybody had a nice holiday if you celebrate, a nice Hanukkah if you celebrate that, or at least some nice time off and a little rest and relaxation. I know that I have needed it very bad, and I am ready to bring this year to a close. And next Wednesday we'll kick off the new year already at the 1st. So today is the best opportunity I could think of to talk about my number one broad of the year. The broad of the year. I'm just going to say she's the broad of the year. She is for me and for this podcast, since this is my podcast. She's been on my mind so much lately. And a lot of women do amazing things all the time in the world. But for me, my focus, I think, the things I think about the most and that weigh on me most heavily are women's rights and equality and helping women who have been so beaten down by the patriarchy and are such disadvantaged positions, and seeing that change. I'm very invested in that as a person. I'm sure that you know that if you're a longtime listener, and if you're not a longtime listener, now you know. So this is a woman who I think, for me, in the course of the entire year, I see her impact potentially having extremely huge, long-lasting change, specifically in France. And the woman I am talking about is Giséle Pelicot. I have talked about her, I think, a couple episodes ago, maybe a couple months ago. And this is a trigger warning because Giséle's story involves the trial of her against her rapists, which just concluded in France. So if you are queasy or not ready to talk or listen to, news related to that, definitely skip forward or, come back later or skip it entirely. But because it's happening in France, it's not being talked about very much here in the U.S., which is a shame. The U.S., and maybe all countries do this, but a lot of Americans, I feel like, don't have a good sense of what is going on in the rest of the world, even though things that happen in other places do affect us, and they do affect the pendulum of women's rights around the world, right? And so I think it's important that we think about other places than just the U.S. Also, obviously, in the U.S., we have a lot of other issues right now, and we will for the foreseeable future. But Giséle Pelicot, hers is this case against her rapist. So starting in September, they began this case, and it was Giséle versus all of these men who had at that point allegedly raped her. And it was her ex-husband and 50 men. 50 men. Her husband had essentially put sleeping pills into her drinks, so she was passed out, and he invited other people over to their home and told them that she liked it or that she was enjoying it and this is what she wanted, yada yada, whatever. It's all hearsay. And he also happened to video record it, which is, it's all insane. All of it's insane. Not one thing is not more insane than the other, right? And he was arrested at a grocery store. Her husband. First of all, this went on for 10 years, and she didn't know. She just thought she had a lot of issues sleeping, and she was starting to have all these terrible effects on her life. Her hair was falling out. She started having all these medical issues, and she didn't know why. And, she thought she maybe had cancer or something else. She went through all these tests. Anyway, her then husband was arrested for taking photos, trying to take pictures under somebody's skirt in a grocery store. And as part of the investigation of this, they went onto his hard drive and they found all these videos of Giséle. And photos, too, of her daughter. But these videos of these men in the act, so to speak. And they came to Giséle's door and brought her, they brought her into the police station and they said, we need you to see something. And they showed her these videos. And, the life as she knew it, with a doting husband and a healthy family, completely unraveled. Now, this case went to court, which was, that in itself is unusual. In France, I've been reading a lot of articles about this, and apparently France's Institute of Public Policies released some numbers in 2024 saying that on average 86% of complaints about sexual abuse and 94% of rapes were either not prosecuted or never came to trial between 2012 and 2021. That's a huge figure. I didn't find any relative figures for us here in the US. This is particularly France focused. And last year, apparently 230,000 women reported that they had been victims of sexual violence in France. And only 6% of rape complaints are investigated at all. And usually, after that, the trial is conducted behind closed doors, which apparently is continuously a nightmare for the victim, who's treated very badly by the defense lawyers, and there's no public accountability. There's no public in the room to kind of witness this and speak to it. And so Giséle's case went to trial, starting in September. And Giséle said, I don't want it to be private. I don't want anonymity. I want my face on this trial. I want people to know me. And I want to be there in the court with the defenders, and I want the trial public. She allowed, they made this accommodation for her, which I guess they don't usually do, where they allowed reporters into the courtroom, which they don't usually do, and the public, whoever fit. They had to extend seating eventually. And this is highly unusual. And the thing, oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. But the phrase, if you Google it, Giséle Pelicot and this trial, the thing that Giséle said is that shame must change sides. And that specifically refers to, usually victims are shamed in the case of sexual assault and rape, right? They're made to think they did something wrong, they did something bad, or that they're bad. But Giséle says shame must change sides from the victims to the perpetrators. They're the ones that should be ashamed. Shame must change sides is, I think it's my phrase of the year. It's an incredible phrase to think. Shame. This might be because I'm a big reader and lover of Brené Brown, but I believe that shame itself is such a motivating factor in so many decisions, especially when it comes to things like this: sexual assault, rape. Victims are made to feel so bad about it, and it's not their fault. It's not their fault. Even if you go to a bar, to meet somebody, if he spikes your drink and drugs you, that's not your fault. It's not your fault. It doesn't matter what the circumstances leading up to it are. If you did not give consent, then it is the perpetrator's fault. And what's interesting in France, I should also say, in France, their laws are different than in the U.S., and the word consent is not really a word, or it's not involved in the charges that they levy in rape. It has nothing to do with consent. I have a note here about it because I didn't want to misquote it. Let me scroll till I find it. Let's see. Oh, the cat's scratching. I'm not even going to cut it out. You guys are used to hearing the cats now. The wording of France's rape law is vague, particularly in cases where a victim is intoxicated or, like Pelicot, subjected to being drugged, known as, quote, chemical submission. And rape under French law as an act of, quote, an act of sexual penetration committed by violence, coercion, threat, or surprise. And so, in the defense of those perpetrators, their lawyers all were saying things like, oh, they didn't intend to commit rape because the husband, Dominique is his name, invited them to his family home and he gave them instructions on what he wanted to do to his wife. And so, you know, it wasn't rape because they were given permission by her husband. And so consent is not, you know, the presence or absence of consent has supposedly in French law not much to do with, which would explain in many ways why the instances of sexual assault and rape are so high in France, because men are so seldom punished for it. And the other thing that I mentioned that it was an open trial, and that Giséle doing that was in and of itself extremely rare. The other thing that she did was she insisted that the video evidence be played in front of the entire courtroom, including the reporters, everybody there. And she sat there while the videos played. For each of these 50 defendants, the trial just ended last week. So from September till now, December, what was it, 18th, or I think is when the result came in from the jury. They watched all these videos. She watched all these videos. She sat in the court while these videos were watched. Of her assaults, her being assaulted. And I can't even begin to imagine how insanely difficult that would be. How difficult that would be. But the thing, like, I'm flabbergasted by how incredible Giséle is, because the thing that Giséle has done is she has not made rape anonymous. And at the very beginning, she just showed up herself, her family, you know, the immediate people involved in the trial. But day after day, women started lining up outside the courtroom and bringing flowers to her and waiting to try to get in line to watch the trial as well. And they shout all these messages of support, and her face is appearing on graffiti and street art throughout France. And women, this is like the closest equivalent I can think of in the US is the Me Too movement, right? Where women are starting to tell their stories. And they're saying, yes, I have been assaulted. And yes, all my friends have been assaulted. All my female friends have been assaulted. And this is a problem. And by the way, so the sentencing, the trial is complete. I should say it just ended this last week. And her ex-husband was sentenced to 20 years for his crimes. Another 46 of those 50 men were found guilty of rape, 2 of attempted rape, and 2 were found guilty of sexual assault. Strangely, like, there's not a single profile for these guys, which is another point of discussion. Like, I'll take a second to talk about that. They range in ages 26 to 74. Some of them were firefighters and nurses. They were all from this relatively small town. It wasn't the big city. It was this relatively small town. The BBC said that 23 of the men that were on trial, which was about 45%, had previous criminal convictions. Although that's not, let me say, authorities do not collect precise data. So, but that is approximately 4 times the national average in France. 3/4 of those men had children. Half of them are married or in a relationship. A quarter of them, over a quarter of them, said that they had been abused or raped as children, but not all of them. And they span the spectrum, and some of the people showing up in court to support Giséle know those men. Their kids went to school together, or they saw them at the market, or they worked together. Like, these were everyday guys. And they were, quote, lured in a chat room for swingers, is how Dominique connected with them and invited them over. But But the thought that that all of these average every men, 50 of them in this small town said yes to this invitation and did this and committed this crime. And those are astonishing. It's an astonishing crime. And Giséle Pelicot is an astonishing person for choosing to be the face of the trial and to keep the trial so open. And she is, without a doubt, the Woman of the Year. And we'll see, what if there's any far-reaching change, if there are any legislation changes. It's a little too early to see the immediate results of that, other than the actual convictions of these guys. Most of them did not get the sentences that were requested. They were shorter than they requested. Her ex-husband got 20 years. Some more handed sentences from 3 to 13 years. Most of them have already been in jail, and so their sentences are already started from when they've been in jail. But keep them locked up forever is what I say. I don't know. I can't understand the behavior and even the fact that some of them never even admitted it and said, how could you not know? How could you not know? You have to know that somebody is unconscious underneath you. You have to fucking know. That's crazy. That's crazy to me. But Giséle's actions, I think, are going to have a ripple effect, at least for France, and I hope for other places too, and a discussion about consent and what consent means, and that sexual abuse, domestic abuse, it's not okay, and it needs to be taken more seriously by legal systems everywhere, by the police, by the hospitals. Everybody needs to take them. Apparently in France, hospitals will even turn people away that are asking for a rape kit. They send them away, and they have to really demand. That's atrocious. That's a society that doesn't respect women and the violation of women. And it's fucking France. This isn't some third world country, that it's France. And I hope that we see real change from it. But in the meantime, I just think Giséle is a wonder. And I hope that she, we all have to make decisions every day about the things we stand up for and how we use our voices. And sometimes it's hard and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we're in a position where we feel like our livelihood will be threatened and we don't feel safe to say something, or there's a variety of reasons why someone would not speak up and not choose that difficult path. And sometimes too, just the weight of that difficult path, the heaviness of it, and what you have to carry as the public face of such a horrific crime. I can understand why someone wouldn't want to do that. And that makes it so much more powerful when someone does choose to do it. And I hope that Giséle, I doubt you'll listen to this, or I don't even know if you speak English, so there's that. But I hope that Giséle, now that the trial's concluded, will be able to find some kind of peace for herself and hopefully some kind of healing from this horrific event. And I hope, France, you find some healing and you make some changes, because the women of France aren't going to put up with this anymore, and you've got to do better, France. And yeah, I think, I'll just close with a reminder for my lovely male ally listeners that it's not just women who can speak up. It's men too. And calling out bad behavior, bad treatment of women, abuse, calling it out, it's uncomfortable. You could lose friends. There's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't, but you can save a life. You can save many lives. And you could be a real hero, maybe not like Superman in a cape, but I think anybody that helps to prevent violence and prevent crime, and who calls out bad behavior, and reports bad behavior too, you'll always be a hero to me, because that's what we need to see change. We need to see people speak up. And Giséle, my heart is forever with you and forever grateful for everything that you've done for France. You are my Broad of the Year. To learn more about Giséle Pelicot, see pictures of her and quotes from this episode, head on over to broadsyoushouldknow.com. While you're there, you can click on over to the About page and read more about me, my bio, photo, links to my stuff, all right there. Are you following Broads You Should Know on social yet? We are on YouTube, subscribe now, and Facebook and Instagram at Broads You Should Know, and Twitter at BYSK Podcast. To suggest a broad, fill out the form on our website or email us at broadsyoushouldknow@gmail.com. If you are a fan of this podcast, do me a favor, share an episode with your friends or family, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps new listeners to find us. Broads You Should Know is produced and edited by me, Sara, with original music by Darren Callahan. Finally, if you were really intrigued by this episode about Giséle Pelicot, then I highly recommend that you check out some of our previous year summary Broads episodes. We have summaries for 2021, 2022, and 2023. So check out our Broads in Review to learn more about some other great Broads in past years. And we'll see you next week for a broad review of 2024.